get ready for a thrilling adventure. In The Robber Bridegroom, a brave young woman uncovers a terrifying secret about her suitor. Can she outsmart the villain and reveal the truth before it's too late?
There was once a miller with a beautiful daughter he wished to see happily married. A suitor soon appeared, seeming very rich, and the miller promised his daughter to him. However, the young maiden didn't feel the love or confidence she thought she should for her future husband. Whenever she saw him or thought of him, a secret horror filled her heart. One day the suitor asked, "You are my betrothed, yet you have never visited my house." The maiden truthfully replied, "I don't know where your house is." He told her, "My house is in the dark forest." She tried to make excuses, saying she couldn't find her way there. The bridegroom insisted, "Next Sunday you must come to me. I've invited guests, and I will strew ashes so you can find your way through the forest." When Sunday came, the maiden felt very uneasy, though she didn't know why. To mark her path, she filled both her pockets full of peas and lentils. She followed the ashes scattered at the forest entrance. At every step, she carefully dropped a couple of peas on the ground. She walked almost the entire day, deeper and deeper, until she reached the middle of the forest where it was darkest. There stood a solitary house that looked dark and dismal, and she did not like it one bit. She went inside the dismal house, but no one was there. Absolute stillness reigned. Suddenly a clear voice cried, turn back, young maiden dear, 'tis a murderer's house you enter here." The maiden looked up and saw that the voice came from a small bird hanging in a cage on the wall. Again it cried, clearly repeating its warning, turn back, young maiden dear, 'tis a murderer's house you enter here." The young maiden, feeling a chill, continued on, exploring the empty house. Every room was silent and vacant, with no human being to be found anywhere. At last, she came to the cellar, where an extremely aged woman sat, her head shaking constantly. "Can you not tell me," the maiden asked, "if my betrothed lives here?" "Alas, poor child," replied the old woman with a sigh, "where have you come? You are in a murderer's den. You think you are a bride soon to be married, but you will keep your wedding with death." The old woman warned, "Look, I have been forced to put a great kettle on the fire, with water in it. When they have you, they will cut you to pieces without mercy, cook you and eat you, for they are eaters of human flesh." The old woman, taking pity, declared, "If I do not have compassion on you and save you, you are lost." Thereupon, she quickly led the maiden behind a great wooden hogshead, where she could not be seen. "Be as still as a mouse," the old woman whispered. "Do not make a sound or move, or all will be over with you." She explained her plan. "At night, when the robbers are asleep, we will escape. I have long waited for an opportunity." Hardly had this been done when the godless crew arrived home. They dragged with them another young girl, who was terribly scared. The robbers, drunk and boisterous, paid no heed to the screams and lamentations of the new captive. They gave her 3 full glasses of wine to drink, 1 white, 1 red, and 1 yellow. With this, her heart broke in 2. Thereupon, they tore off her delicate raiment, laid her on a long, rustic table, and brutally cut her beautiful body into pieces, scattering salt upon them. The poor hidden bride behind the cask trembled and shook with fear, for she now saw very clearly the terrible fate the robbers had intended for her. One of the robbers noticed a gleaming gold ring on the little finger of the murdered girl. As it would not come off easily, he took an axe and chopped the finger off. But unexpectedly the finger sprang up into the air, flying right over the hogshead and falling straight into the hidden bride's bosom. The robber, candle in hand, searched for it but couldn't find it anywhere. Then another robber asked, "Have you looked behind the great hogshead?" But the clever old woman quickly interjected, "Come and get something to eat and leave off looking until the morning. The finger won't run away from you." Convinced by the old woman, the robbers agreed, "She is right," and gave up their search. They sat down to eat their feast. The wise old woman had a plan. She poured a special sleeping draught into their wine. Soon, they all lay down in the cellar, fast asleep and snoring loudly. When the bride heard their heavy snores, she quietly emerged from behind the hogshead. She had to step over the sleeping men, who lay in rows on the ground, and great was her terror lest she should waken one of them. But God helped her, and she got safely over each one. The old woman went up with her, opened the doors carefully, and they hurried out of the murderers' den with all their speed. The wind had kindly blown away the scattered ashes from the path. However, the peas and lentils the maiden had dropped had sprouted and grown up, forming a clear, green trail. This helped them find their way through the moonlit forest. They walked all night long, following the green guides. Finally, in the early morning light, they arrived safely back at the mill. There, the maiden recounted everything that had happened to her father, exactly as she had experienced it, from the moment she entered the dark forest until her escape. When the day came for the wedding celebration, the bridegroom appeared, looking expectant. The miller had invited all his relations and friends for the joyous occasion. As everyone sat around the grand table, each person was asked to relate a story or something interesting. The bride, however, sat quietly, saying nothing at all. Then the bridegroom turned to her and playfully said, "Come, my darling, don't you know anything? Please relate something to us, just like the rest." She replied, "Then I will relate a dream." She began softly, "I was walking alone through a wood, and at last I came to a house, in which no living soul was, but on the wall there was a bird in a cage which cried, 'Turn back, young maiden dear, 'tis a murderer's house you enter here.' And this it cried once more. My darling, I only dreamt this. Then I went through all the rooms, and they were all empty, and there was something so horrible about them." She continued, "At last I went down into the cellar, and there sat a very, very old woman whose head shook. I asked her, 'Does my bridegroom live in this house?' She answered, 'Alas, poor child, you have got into a murderer's den. Your bridegroom does live here, but he will hew you in pieces and kill you, and then he will cook you and eat you.' My darling, I only dreamt this, but the old woman kindly hid me behind a great hogshead. And scarcely was I hidden," the maiden recounted, "when the robbers came home, dragging a maiden with them, to whom they gave 3 kinds of wine to drink, white, red, and yellow, with which her heart broke in two. My darling, I only dreamt this." Thereupon they pulled off her pretty clothes, and hewed her fair body in pieces on a table, and sprinkled them with salt. My darling, I only dreamt this. And one of the robbers saw that there was still a ring on her little finger, and as it was hard to draw off, he took an axe and cut it off. "But the finger sprang up in the air," she continued, "and sprang behind the great hogshead, and fell in my bosom, and there is the finger with the ring." And with these words, she triumphantly drew it forth from her dress, and held it up, showing it clearly to all those present at the feast. The robber, who had during this entire story become as pale as ashes, and was trembling with fear, leapt up from his seat and desperately wanted to escape the hall and the gathered guests. But the quick-thinking guests, now understanding the full horror of the situation, swiftly held him fast. They prevented his escape and delivered him over to the justice system. Soon after, he and his entire troop of wicked robbers were captured and executed for their infamous and cruel deeds. The world was made safer and happier for all right-thinking folk. The brave maiden, no longer a potential victim, could finally live a life of peace and happiness. And so, children, the story of the Robber Bridegroom teaches us an important lesson. Always trust your instincts, especially when something feels wrong. Even if someone seems charming or rich, if your heart tells you they are not good, listen to that feeling. This brave maiden listened to her inner voice, found a kind helper, and used her cleverness to bring justice to bad people. Listening to your intuition can keep you safe and lead you to a happy and peaceful life.
Ever dreamed of being the hero? Now you get to be the star. Your adventure starts at TalesMio. Visit talesmio.com now.